Hey guys, it's Michael Kummer here, and for today's video I've teamed up with Levels Health, the brand behind the continuous glucose monitor that I'm using, and I've agreed to participate in the Coke Challenge. It's an experiment in which we'll find out how drinking Coke right before a workout influences my blood sugar response in comparison to having a can of Coke, regular Coke, without working out, just sitting on the couch for 2 hours and not moving at all. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel and you click on the little alert button so you get notified when I do more crazy stuff like this. So the hypothesis of this experiment is that if you work out by going for a 30-minute walk or riding the bike for 30 minutes or doing something else that increases your heart rate, then your blood sugar response to carbohydrates, in this case high fructose corn syrup, 39 whopping grams of that, is going to be different and lower than if you have the same beverage without working out. And so what I decided to do is for the first part of the experiment, I would have a can of Coke and then I would take my bike, ride it to workout, takes me approximately 30 minutes, and then perform a CrossFit workout, starting with a strength portion where my heart rate is not gonna go up very far, followed by a metabolic conditioning where my heart rate is likely going to increase significantly. And then I would ride my bike back home. And so I'd like to find out, and for this video I have found out, how my blood sugar is responding to that. And then a couple of days later, I'll do the same thing. I have a can of Coke roughly at the same time without having eaten anything before, obviously, and see if my blood sugar response is different. If it's higher, the assumption is that it will be significantly higher than on the day where I worked out following the consumption of this sugar-loaded beverage. So let's see how it goes. Let's start with day one, the day I worked out. All right, test number one. My first Coke in, I don't know, 10 years or so. And then I'm gonna go for a 30-minute bike ride followed by CrossFit workout. So we'll see how that impacts my blood glucose readings. Well, cheers. Ah, what a piss water. I don't know how people drink this. Holy shit, to drink that all. Bah, like gasoline. Well, I'm getting sick in my stomach. It's like acid mixed with sugar. Blah. I hope I'm not gonna throw up during workout. Don't do this at home. Don't do this to yourself. That's absolutely awful. Blah. I don't even want to finish it. I don't know who makes this into drinks, seriously. Holy sh... Well, I'm done with it, fortunately. All right, let's go for a bike ride and let's see what my blood sugar does. Cheers. All right, it's been 2 days since I had my first can of Coke. Today is the drink and sit day. So we'll see how that my body or my glucose responds differently. Actually, the first one, when I did a workout, my glucose levels changed in a way that was unexpected. But we'll do the post-mortem analysis then at the end. But let's see how this goes today. And I can tell you I'm dreading drinking the second can. But here it goes. I really don't understand why people drink this. Wow. Done with it. So let's see what my blood sugar does. I hope I'm not gonna die, otherwise that video will never be finished. All right, I'm finally done drinking Coke, and I don't think I will do that ever again. That was absolutely awful. But the idea of this experiment was to confirm the hypothesis that if you go for a walk or take a bike ride or do some other form of physical activity after consuming carbohydrates, in this case very unhealthy carbohydrates from high fructose corn syrup in Coke, then your blood sugar response would be different, meaning that you should not see such a dramatic spike in blood sugar. Whereas if you don't work out, if you don't move at all, if you're just, sitting on the couch or in an office chair like I did, then your blood sugar response should be significantly higher. And that wasn't necessarily the case with me. And so let's do the following. Let's open up here the Levels app. All right, so I'm in here in the Levels app that is connected with my continuous glucose monitor. And we see that I have an activity response here. And so let's go first to the activity response on Monday. Here is day one, experiment number one, where I drank the Coke at, looks like here at 7:51 in the morning. And then I immediately went for a bike ride. It took me about half an hour and I biked at a pace of approximately 10 to 11 miles an hour. So nothing crazy, but also not, super slow. I was moving at a moderate pace, I want to say. So I started my cycling workout and I arrived at CrossFit here at 8:20 something or so, and you can see my glucose went up to 172 milligrams per deciliter. I think that's the highest glucose reading I've ever had since I've been tracking my blood sugar with the Levels continuous glucose monitor. So it went up significantly, and when I saw that, I thought, holy moly, I don't want to know how my glucose response would be if I hadn't worked out, if I hadn't taken my bike for a ride for 30 minutes. But regardless, I arrived at CrossFit and I was super wired. I was like, everyone was making fun of me because I was talking a lot, which I usually don't unless I'm in front of a camera. I was moving, I couldn't stand still. I was clearly under the influence of a lot of sugar. And so at 8:30, my regular CrossFit routine started. First doing some warm-up, doing some strength training, some moderate lifting, nothing too crazy. And then, as you can see, my blood sugar went down from that point on. And it went down. And at 9:11, I think, I started my next workout, or I started the metabolic conditioning part of the workout. So that was really high intensity. That was pretty intense. And so what I've noticed then is I got my regular blood sugar response. So whenever I do high intensity workouts, my body starts dumping glycogen to make glucose available for my muscles, etc. So that's a usual spike and it actually peaked at 155. So that's fairly normal. What was unexpected was that my body would dump glycogen despite having so much glucose around. I mean, at this point, I guess my insulin had already responded and removed all of that glucose, and then I guess it dumped it again. But I still would have expected a not that much of a peak. But anyway, I peaked again, and then I took the bike home for another 30 minutes. Nothing happened there, nothing crazy. My blood sugar recovered nicely, went all the way down to 81, at which point at 10:30 I had my first meal, well, my second meal if you account for the can of Coke I had, but I didn't crash. So that was good. I thought that maybe after that high that I've never experienced in a long time, I would really feel that low. I didn't. So that was great. And then, looks like, or an indication that my body was able to handle that glucose and just, remove it and be fine without crashing. And then I had my meal, and I had a lot of honey with that meal and some fruits, some berries from our garden, and together with eggs and steak and bacon and some milk kefir. And you can see that, that must have been also, I want to say 40-50 grams of carbs maybe, and my blood sugar only went up to 110. But that's neither here nor there. That's not part of the experiment here. But the point here is, can of Coke with a workout resulted in a significant blood sugar response. So let's go and compare this to, and that's one of the things I really like about the Levels app. I can compare different experiments or different zones, if you will, and see how they stack up. So now we pick the Coke Challenge rest day. I just did it this morning. I still have the taste of Coke in my mouth. And let's compare these two. Holy moly, let's go to the absolute numbers. Looks a little bit slightly less shocking, but nevertheless, you can see here the total. The white line here is today's experiment, where I drank the can of Coke and sat on my butt for 2 hours straight. And my glucose just went up to, if we look at the high here, to 139, it seems like was the highest. So my blood sugar increased only by 37 milligrams per deciliter. That was sedentary. That was not moving after the can of Coke. Whereas for the first experiment, when I rode my bike for 30 minutes and then worked out, my blood sugar spiked by 74 milligrams per deciliter. So what does that tell you? Well, that tells you, or at least it tells me, that for me, at least not on those, as part of this experiment, my body is not reacting to blood sugar any better just because I work out right after. And that's a very important realization, because what it tells you is that while it might be true for most people that if they work out after consuming carbohydrates, they will have a better blood sugar response, it might not be true for you. Looks like it's not true for me either. And so that tells us that, you know, diet and nutrition can be a very personalized or a very personal kind of issue where not everyone responds exactly the same way. And so that makes it really worthwhile just slapping on a continuous blood glucose monitor, at least for a couple of weeks, to find out how your body responds to certain carbs, to exercise, to stress, to, you know, protein maybe, etc. So it's very, very interesting. And so I'm going to add links to the description down below so you can sign up for Levels Health and get one of those continuous blood glucose monitors. But the bottom line here really is that you know, not everyone responds the same way. And regardless of how I responded, regardless of how you respond maybe, I would never ever encourage you to drink Coke. Not because I've seen how my body reacts during the first experiment, but it's absolutely awful food, or a food-like substance, or a beverage for that matter, that should not be part of anyone's diet. It's just bad, bad, bad. And next time I do an experiment like this, and I will continue maybe doing these, are with honey, maybe with bananas or other fruits, to see how my body reacts. Maybe this was a fluke, maybe this was a one-time occurrence, and my body does generally respond better if I work out right after. But for this particular experiment, I could not confirm the hypothesis, and so I guess if it's not always true, it's not a general truth, and you know, you might be reacting differently. If you enjoyed this experiment, which I did from a science perspective, not so much from a drinking piss water perspective, then give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, this button seems to be working as well, but let me know in the comments what I could have done better, maybe swearing less. Until next time.